But when you choose to face that fear and move through it and go to this fear, maybe of death, it's okay to have a little bit of fear of death. Fear is normal, fear is natural. Hello, hello, lovely, and welcome to another episode of Loving Life with Court. Today, we are talking about a life that is loved uses fear as a superpower. We are nearing the end of season 2 of LLWC, and I have about 5 more episodes for you that are really going to tie in all of the stuff we have learned since the beginning of my podcast. And today's episode, we are tying it back to, I believe it was one of the first 10 episodes that I put out, where I was talking about the fear of death and how I learned from Robin Sharma, an amazing author. I talk about him quite a bit, that the greatest fear is the fear of death, and the majority of the decisions we make on any given day, especially the decisions we make for life's major events, strongly relate to our fear of death. And this can be things like marriage or promotions or children or experiences. And although there are many positive ways that the fear of death can help us. Without death, we wouldn't really have this drive in us to truly live and love the life we live. The fear of death can also be really harmful on us if we are not aware of how it's impacting us. And some examples could be like the spouse we choose. If we have this fear of dying one day without having someone by our side, what can happen is that you may settle for someone that is not serving you in your life, maybe even a relationship that is harmful to you, just so that you are able to share life with someone and not die alone. Although that may sound really dramatic, there are many other things like having a good career or having children or making sure that you check off all these things on your bucket list. But when they're driven by fear, when they're driven by lack, by scarcity, we're not able to be in the moment and truly enjoy life the way it's meant to be enjoyed. So today, what I want to explore with you is how to use death as a superpower instead of an inhibitor, I guess you would say. And really understanding, like I said, that without this fear of death, we wouldn't really have the drive in us to truly live and love the life we live. So let's take a lens of where fear of death really can steer us in directions where we settle and instead use it as this beautiful, amazing superpower. So let's explore that. So like I said, the fear of death can actually be a superpower because it pushes us to live more fully, be more present, and take meaningful action in our lives. And the first way it can do that is it creates urgency. So the fear of death reminds us that life is finite, which can make us realize that time is precious. This awareness, it often leads us to stop procrastinating and start prioritizing what really matters. And an example of that could be like knowing that you won't be around forever can really inspire you to finally take that trip or start a business or tell someone how you feel. So taking this lens of urgency over settling and really understanding the difference between those two things. The next way that we can begin to use the fear of death as this amazing superpower is how it encourages our growth. So it forces us to confront our deepest fears, our insecurities and desires, which can often lead to significant personal growth if we do it in the proper way. So once we accept that we won't live forever, we can become less afraid of making risks and being more open to evolving. So someone who's afraid of public speaking might finally push past their fears to share their message because they realize that they don't have unlimited time to wait for the perfect moment. Thinking about how could your fear of death, where maybe it's inhibiting your life, how can it inspire you to grow? And this leads me to our next point, which it makes us value what we have. So when you're aware that life is temporary, you start to appreciate really what you have, from the little things like a quiet morning to the big things like really meaningful relationships. And the fear of death can really make us more grateful and have gratitude, which is such a powerful tool for happiness. So instead of being frustrated about small inconvenience, I encourage you to pause more often and realize how lucky you are to even have a chance to experience it. And it shifts your perspective. This idea shifts your perspective from what's wrong to what's right. You're alive. Maybe you're pain free. Maybe you're around people that love you. Maybe it's as simple as the sun is shining today. Your dishes are clean. My dishwasher is running right now, so that's what popped in my head. I'm so grateful for my dishwasher. And that also saves me so much time to just experience life. And that leads me to my next point, which this fear sparks a desire for legacy for many of us. And that can be what leads us to later in our life where people feel that they didn't do more with their life. They, didn't create something, or they didn't contribute to the world. And although I'm sure there are many ways that the individuals we know that experience those feelings did contribute, let's explore more of how it sparks a desire for legacy and how we can start that now. So knowing that our time on earth is limited can really motivate us to create something that outlasts us. And it doesn't need to be this big, huge thing like creating Apple, but it can be much smaller than that, like giving back to a charity, or, writing a book that's meant to inspire others long after you're gone. Or an even smaller way that you can do that is such a profound and big impact is healing the generational trauma in your life, because this is where true legacy lies. If you can heal a pattern that has been going on far before you, there's so much power in that fear can drive us to leave a mark. And if you want to leave a mark, start with healing your family, yourself, your children, your ancestors. And this is something that gives life more meaning. It doesn't always need to be these big things, because really healing something like generational trauma is huge, 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 huge. And although maybe Joe Blow down the street doesn't know you did that, there is many generations after you that will be greatly impacted by this. And my last point on how the fear of death can be such this freaking kick-ass superpower is it teaches us to live in the moment. So it reminds us that nothing is guaranteed, not even tomorrow. And this can help us focus on living fully in the present instead of constantly worrying about the future or regretting the past. An example is when you're at a family gathering, instead of checking your phone or stressing about work, you're more likely to savor the time spent with loved ones, knowing that every moment counts. So essentially, when it comes to the fear of death, if we can become in tune with this, where it makes us more grateful for what we have, forces us to be more in the present, drives us to leave a legacy that lives on far past beyond us. It offers value in our life and value for what we have, and it encourages growth. This superpower can literally change your entire freaking life. And I'll tell you what is not going to change your life that many, many of you fear, which is the fear of pursuing. It is so, so dangerous. And I'll tell you why. The fear of pursuing what truly excites or challenges us is so harmful because it holds us back from living our fullest, most authentic lives. It leads to regret, it limits your potential, it blocks creativity, it dims your light, and it feeds into the cycle of fear. And let's explore what I mean by those points. Number one, it keeps you stuck in comfort. The fear of pursuing your dreams, which is the complete opposite of the fear of death. The fear of death is what should drive us to pursue our dreams, often comes from wanting to stay in a familiar, safe place. And when you're in a familiar, safe place where you're staying comfortable, your energy becomes stagnant and your life becomes stagnant. The problem with staying in your comfort zone is that it limits your growth and potential. By avoiding risks or new experiences, you prevent yourself from discovering what's truly capable for you. And when we look at the fear of death is what should drive our growth. And the second point, it leads to regret. Years down the road, you might look back on the things you didn't do and wish you had taken the leap. So the fear of death is not what should prevent us. The fear of pursuing is what prevents us. The fear of death should encourage us to pursue whatever the fuck it is we want. And when we look at how this fear of pursuing leads to regret, regret can eat away at you far more than failure ever could. And it's often the result of never trying because you were afraid. And this leads to my next point, which it limits your potential. The fear of pursuing what excites you often stems from self-doubt. When you're afraid to go after what feels right for you, you're telling yourself that you don't deserve success, happiness, or fulfillment. And this belief can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, preventing you from achieving your true potential. So if you've always dreamed of writing a book, but fear no one will read it, you may never write that book. You never give yourself the chance to see your potential, and you never experience the satisfaction of doing something that aligns with your purpose. It's that simple. It blocks your creativity and your innovation. This fear of taking risks or stepping out of the norm can stifle creativity. The world's biggest innovations, breakthroughs, and artistic masterpieces came from people who were willing to step out of their comfort zone and take risks. Think about famous inventors like Thomas Edison or Steve Jobs. They didn't let fear stop them. Their willingness to try something new, even if it failed first, and when it comes to Thomas Edison, he failed almost 1,000 times, it led to incredible success. And Thomas Edison was the creator of the light bulb. So let's go into our next point, which it dims your light. When you don't pursue what excites or challenges you because of fear, you're holding back your truest self. Your passions, your ideas, your talents are all a part of who you are, and ignoring them creates this huge disconnect between your inner self and your outer world. So this can lead to feelings of dissatisfaction or a sense that you're not living the life you're meant to. And this is where I talked about earlier that I see myself, so many people that are retired, that are in their late 60s, 70s, 80s, and they wish they did more. They wish they had something to leave. And you know what it was that left them stagnant and left them not doing that was the fear of pursuing, not the fear of death. When we can use the fear of death as a superpower, it takes us away from even this fear of pursuing, this fear of limbo, staying where we're comfortable, and skyrockets us to do things that we don't even understand are achievable for us, don't even realize. So an example of it dims your light, this fear of pursuing, is if you're passionate about helping people but fear rejection or not being good enough, you might hold back from starting your own coaching business or offering your talents. This resonates a lot with me. For a long time, I was actively dimming my light because I was so afraid that people would reject me. And guess what? Even when I was actively afraid of that, people rejected me all the time. So you know what I decided? I decided to stop giving a shit and do what makes me feel good and doing what makes me feel connected, because in 10 years from now or 5 years from now, I'm not going to give a crap about rejection, because I'm going to be so fucking proud of myself that I pursued what I wanted to do. And this leads me to our last point on why the fear of pursuing is so dangerous, it's so harmful, is it feeds into the cycle of fear, and not the one that we use as a superpower. Avoiding things that scare you doesn't make the fear go away. It makes it stronger. So every time you give in to fear, it gets easier to let it control you, and fear becomes a habit. And over time, you may become paralyzed by it, not even realizing how much it's taking away from you. So in short, the fear of pursuing your true desires is dangerous because it keeps you from growing, from learning, and experiencing the fullness of life. It locks you into the cycle of what ifs and maybes and prevents you from ever finding out just how far you can go. But when you choose to face that fear and move through it and go to this fear, maybe of death, It's okay to have a little bit of fear of death. Fear is normal, fear is natural, but using that as a superpower, what happens when you choose to face that fear and move through it, you open yourself up to new opportunities, to greater fulfillment, and a life lived with purpose. And by using the fear of death as a motivator, we can turn it into a superpower that propels us towards living a life more intentional, more fulfilling, and present in life. And it helps you get out of your head and into the life you really want to create. So that's today's episode. We have a few more episodes of season 2 of Loving Life with Court. Don't forget to follow so you never miss another episode. I love you so much, and a friendly reminder to not only be kind to others, but also to your beautiful, amazing self. I will see you next time.